Welcome to the Exposer. So the time has come to expose the main man at Spac Nation. So this is only the part 1, which we will name the beginning. So this episode will just show the beginning of PT. PT is a Nigerian man born and raised, born into a family who's always been very religious. He grew up in his dad's church, which was called Spac Ministries, which was just an ordinary church doing things in the right way, with a few elders leading the congregation, as you see in a normal average church. This is where PT kept on attending until the age of 17, allegedly. From the age of 17, he became rebellious and started to gradually move away from the traditional church setting, a place that was set on simply praising God and reading the Bible. It no longer started to appeal to him. And so with the influence of friends on the outside, he started to dabble in smoking and drinking. Smoking especially. He allegedly would smoke a lot of weed. One day in church, he even clashed Pastor Kevin by saying that in his earlier teenage years, he smoked more weed than Kevin probably has ever done. We don't know how much about the details of what PT did between the age of 17 to 29 prior to his arrival to the UK. I believe he was in and out of church. However, what we do know is that during his first few years in the UK, he was based in Peckham, South East London, living with his cousin, John Boyega at the time, allegedly, who Toby was close with. However, we believe they are no longer on talking terms. PT has mentioned in a sermon before that it is because John Boyega allegedly is too clouded by the image of Hollywood, which is a satanic playground according to Toby. However, we have every reason to believe that John Boyega perhaps does not support Spac due to good reasons, because after all, before John Boyega's rise to fame, he did play the drums at one point there. And this was before the name changed into Spac Nation 3 years ago. Spac Ministries was an okay church, a church that used to speak about uplifting the generation and being rooted in Jesus. Toby would even go as far as to appear on television like this video.
Bless you. I'm so happy you're there to watch me today, and I believe that the Almighty God is about to do something in your life. My name is Toby Adegboyega of Spac Ministries. Spac means Salvation Proclaimers Anointed Church. Now, I've received over the week a lot of emails, prayer requests, and very beautiful comments, some lovely, some,
So just for the record, guys, at this point we have reasons to believe that he could have very well been legit, as his on-camera appearances were simply of him preaching to a mixed crowd of only 100 congregants and about promoting a book that he wrote. Writing books is a good tactic that many preachers use because it can help them profit on the side, but also allow people to read into something that the author has put much time into publishing. The book also does not have anything suspicious in it. It is not like now where PT constantly puts out SoundClouds and Periscopes of him ranting, disrespecting people, coercing them to hit targets with retweeting certain posts or winning souls or pushing for seed. We have definitely seen a shift of agenda here, unfortunately. Also, PT never used to dress flashy in comparison to now. He would not look the part of many of these current prosperity gospel preachers. So why is he now dripped in expensive designers? He was never into that, which means he no longer dresses humbly for God, but for the glory of man. And we know that it's not even him who dresses himself. How do I know? Toby would always say that he came to England with nothing but a shirt and a trouser. Anybody in Spac, former and current, would be able to give you this account without stuttering. Toby came to the country 12 years ago with a shirt and a trouser and hardly any money in his pocket. Months into settling down, he will take on the job of being a kitchen porter, washing plates in the back kitchen of hotels. This would allegedly bring him back only £400 a month, with which he would sow, meaning give £200 to the church he was attending, and £70 to the pastor who lived upstairs in the place he stayed at the time. He would also walk long distances to get home. No public transport, because otherwise he would be dipping into his seed money. And he often also said that he doesn't play with money that he gives for missions. People usually called by God to preach and plant churches in far areas. He would also talk about the rough sleeping conditions he would endure, sleeping on mattresses. Here we have a video of Toby on an outreach. This video seems like a good one too. All he's doing is what the Bible tells us to do, which is to love our neighbours, to do the work that we are called to do. preach the gospel out on these streets, to care for passerbys, not harassing them or recruiting them through selling dreams. They even wore shirts representing where they came from. We see that they were also evangelizing to people of all ages, backgrounds and races. I'd like to keep encouraging individuals and churches that are doing this to continue, because it is the right way to go and nothing is wrong with that. Unfortunately for PT and all who decided to follow him for the next several years, took a turn for the worst and completely stopped doing it that way. In fact, PT even believes that people who preach on the streets are polluting the waters, which I believe he means they are making the faith look embarrassing. So for PT looking rich and not telling them about Jesus but showing them a certain lifestyle is the way to go. This is how he thinks now. So his first church, Spac Ministries, was located somewhere in SE1 at Lancaster House, their very first venue, which they ended up having to get kicked out from due to being in rent arrears, allegedly. The tithes and offering being given at the time was simply not enough, and PT would be annoyed over this, as anyone would be, to be fair. So every other week, Toby would talk about how he came to England with nothing, with a shirt and trousers. This is the story he would continue to tell his members almost every other week, that he would allegedly bring him only £400 a month from his job, which he would sort half of it, and he would always give £70 to the pastor. He would also walk long distances to get himself home in Peckham. No public transport, because otherwise he'll be dipping into his seed money, and he often said that he doesn't play with no money that he gives for mission. He would repeat the same thing that I mentioned earlier, so that his members would understand the importance of giving. So him repeating the story at least once every other service is what would play into people's mind and psychologically convince them to believe that giving is not a choice, it is an obligation. He has also told us that he knew the Bible very well and how at the age of 8 he read it back to front. But even though he's done that, it doesn't mean you should hardly preach from the Bible in front of the pulpit. So the aim for Toby was to go to university and get a law degree, hopefully move to America, so he had said before. But apparently, according to PT, God had plans for him to do something in the UK, which explains the whole scenario of him arriving here 12 years ago and eventually making himself a pastor. But we will touch on that on a later date. This information, I repeat, has not been fabricated by ourselves, but it is information that he has said, and I've heard it with my own ears. However, I do feel like there's a disconnect or holes in this story that he will tell us about his past, meaning we only know what he told us in service and whenever we would go to his house. Throughout the next couple episodes, we shall attempt to pin it all together in order for you guys to really understand who he is and why he is where he is now in life. Stay locked. Like I mentioned at the beginning, there's so many things to expose about this man, so there'll be many episodes about him. So we want you guys to understand from the beginning and see the transition to why he became the man that he is today and why his organization has become corrupted. If we tried to fit everything into one episode, then this video will probably be 10 hours long because there's so many things to expose. So this is the reason why we will break it down one by one so you guys understand every single thing that has gone on in this organization. So you can see, PT was basically a man that came here and had a vision and had a plan. And frustration possibly led him to doing things he probably shouldn't have done, but then we'll talk about that later. But you can see from his beginning, this was not a man who dressed in a flashy manner. This was not a man who behaved with any sort of arrogance. And this was a man that had a small church. And you can see majority of the people at the church were older people, which tells us that this whole concept of having a lot of young people at the church is something that was part of his plan to expand his brand. So there's a lot of things to actually break down. But you can see, he never used to dress flashy. He had a small church. He allegedly came from Nigeria to come here and study. He wanted to become a lawyer and move to the USA. And for some reason, he said the Lord called him to become a pastor. This is what he believes. This is a man who mentioned at the age of 8, he basically knew the Bible. So he basically believes he had a gift from such an early age. He mixed with the wrong crowd. Despite growing up in a very religious family, he started to mix up with the wrong crowd. And he would always preach about how he used to smoke a lot of weed. So he has a dark past that people did not know. But the most important message that you guys need to get from this first episode is the fact that he kept repeating the story of how he used to get £400 a month, allegedly, from working as a kitchen porter. And he used to give half of the money to the church and give another £70 to the pastor. Because this story is the main reason why Spac Nation started to drift away from potentially being a good church into becoming the church that it is today. Because this is something to this day he preaches. So there's definitely a powerful message behind it that's making his members give ridiculous amount of money today. So you guys saw he allegedly lost his first building because he couldn't afford a rent. So the frustration, could that be the reason why he became the man that he is? We will find out in the next episode. So this is part 1, called The Beginning of Exposing Spac Nation PT.